Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamuna Tira
Tira Vanachari
Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo. Grantha Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Shri Gaura Nitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 2, and today we'll do verses 6 and 7. Verse number 6 is written in prose, it's not really written as a verse. So I'll just read out verse 6 and then we can do verse 7 together. Tam eva vidure madhukarim Iva sumanasa upajigrantim dvija manujamano nayanala vinayavaloka susvarakshravayavair manase nrinam kushumayudhasya Vidadhatim vivaram nijamukha vigalitamrita savasahasa bhasanamoda madanda madhukara nikaroparodhena drutapada vinyasena valguspandanastana kalasha kabara bhara rasanam devim tad avalokanena vivrita vasarasya bhagavato makharadvajasya vasham upanito jadavad iti hovacha. So the translation is, like a honeybee, the Apsara smelled the beautiful and attractive flowers. She could attract the minds and vision of both humans and demigods by her playful movements, her shyness and humility, her glances, the very pleasing sounds that poured from her mouth as she spoke, and the motion of her limbs. By all these qualities she opened for Cupid, who bears an arrow of flowers, a path of oral reception into the minds of men. When she spoke, nectar seemed to flow from her mouth. As she breathed, the bees, mad for the taste of her breath, tried to hover about her beautiful lotus-like eyes. Disturbed by the bees, she tried to move hastily, but as she raised her feet to walk quickly, her hair, the belt on her hips, and her breasts, which were like water jugs, also moved in a way that made her extremely beautiful and attractive. Indeed, she seemed to be making a path for the entrance of Cupid, who is most powerful. Therefore the prince, completely subdued by seeing her, spoke to her as follows. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. How a beautiful woman's movements and gestures, her hair and the structure of her breasts, hips, and other bodily features attract the minds not only of men but of demigods also, is very finely described in this statement. The words Dvija and Manuja specifically emphasize that the attraction of feminine gestures is powerful everywhere within this material world, both on this planet and in the higher planetary systems. It is said that the standard of living in the higher planetary systems is thousands and thousands of times higher than the standard of living on this planet. Therefore, the beautiful bodily features of the women there are also thousands and thousands of times more attractive than the features of the women on earth. The Creator has constructed women in such a way that their beautiful voices and movements and the beautiful features of their hips, their breasts, and other parts of their bodies attract the members of the opposite sex, both on earth and on other planets, and awaken their lusty desires. When one is controlled by Cupid or the beauty of women, he becomes stunned like matter such as stone. Captivated by the material movements of women, he wants to remain in this material world. Thus one's promotion to the spiritual world is checked simply by seeing the beautiful bodily structure and movements of women. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore warned all devotees to beware of the attraction of beautiful women and materialistic civilization. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu even refused to see Prataparudra Maharaj because he was a very opulent person in the material world. Lord Chaitanya said on this connection, Niskinchanasya Bhagavad Bhajanon Mukhasya. Those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, because they are very serious about going back home, back to Godhead, should be very careful to avoid seeing the beautiful gestures of women and should also avoid seeing persons who are very rich. Niskinchanasya Bhagavad Bhajanon Mukhasya Param param jigamishor bhavasagarasya sandarshanam vishayinamatayošitam cha ha hanta hanta vishabhakshanatopyasadau. Alas, for a person who is seriously desiring to cross the material ocean and engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord without material motives, seeing a materialist engaged in sense gratification or seeing a woman who is similarly interested is more abominable than drinking poison willingly. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 11.8. One who is serious about going back home, back to Godhead, should not contemplate the attractive features of women and the opulence of rich men. Such contemplation will check one's advancement in spiritual life. Once a devotee is fixed in Krishna consciousness, however, these attractions will not agitate his mind. Okay, we'll do verse number 7. And I'll just join on Zoom so that I can share the screen.
Recording in progress.
Sorry?
I'm already sharing the screen.
Oh, it's already shared. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, so verse number 7. So you can all repeat the verse. Katvam chikirshati chakim munivarya saile.
Tvam chikishasi chakim munivarya saile.
Mayasi kapi bhagavat paradevatayah.
Mayasi kapi
मायासि
bhagavat
कापि
paradevataya.
भगवत्परे
Vidye
देवतायाः
bibarshi dhanushi suriratmanorthe.
Vijay
Vijay Vibharshi
विजय
Dhanashi
धनुषि
Suradhatma
सुहृद
Narte
आत्मनोऽर्थे
Kimva mrigan mrigayase vipine pramattan.
Kimva
Kimva
mrigan
Mrigan
mrigase
Mrigayase
vipine
विवर्षितमुषि
Vipine
pramattan.
सुहृद
Pramattan
आत्मनोऽर्थे
Katvam chikirshasi chakim
Chikirshasi Chakim
munivarya
Munivarya
saile.
Shaile
Mayasi kapi
Mayasika
bhagavat
Bhagavat
paradevatayah.
Paradevataya
Vidye
Vijay
bibarshi
Vibharshi
dhanushi
Dhanashi Suradhatma
suriratmanorte.
Narte
Kimva
Kimva
mrigan
Mrigan
mrigayase
Mrigayase
vipine
Vipine
pramattan.
Pramattan
Is there anyone online who'd like to chant the verse?
त्वं चिकर्षसि च किं मुनिवर्यशैले
Oh, wait.
Tvam
Tvam chikirshasi
chikishasi chakim
chakim
munivarya
munivarya
saile.
shale
मायासि कापि भगवत्परदेवतायाः
Mayasi
Mayasika
Mayasikapi
kapi
bhagavat
bhagavat
paradevataya
paradevataya.
विजय विवर्षितमुषि सुहृद आत्मनोरिथे
Vijay
Vijay
Vidye
vivarsi
vivarshi
vibharshi
dhanushi
dhanushi
suriratmanorte.
suriratmanorte.
suradhatmanorte
किं वा मृगान् मृगसे विपिने परमातान्
Kimva
Kimva
mrigan
mrigan
Kimva
mrigayase
mrigayase
vipine
mrigayase vipine
pramattan.
pramattan
pramattan.
Ka tvam chikirshasi chakim munivarya shale
त्वं
Tvam
Turn the audio off on
chikishasi
there and I'll
चिकीर्षसि
just do
kauchim
it from here.
munivarya
मुनिवर्यशैले
saile.
Mayasikapi bhagavat paradevataya
मायासिकापि
Mayasikapi bhagavat
भगवत्परदेवतायाः
paradevataya.
Vijye vibharshi dhanushi suradhatmanorthe
विजय
Vijay vivasi
विवर्षितमुषि
dhanusi
शरद आत्मनोरिथे
suriratmanorite.
Kim va mृगान् मृगयसे विपिने प्रमत्तान्
किं वा
Kim va
मृगान्
mrigan
मृगसे
mrigayase
विपिने
vipine
प्रमर्तान्
pramattan.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, oh,
Sorry. Uh, Ka.
Ka,
Who.
who,
Tvam.
tvam,
Are you.
you.
Chikirsasi.
chiki,
Chikirsasi.
Are you trying to do.
Are you trying to do?
Cha.
Cha.
Also.
Also.
Kim.
Kim.
What.
What?
Munivarya.
Munivarya.
O best of the Munis.
O best in the Munis.
Shaile.
Shaile.
On this hill.
On this hill.
Maya.
Maya.
Illusory potency.
Illusory potency.
Asi.
Asi.
Are you.
Are you?
Kapi.
Kapi.
Some.
Some.
Bhagavat.
Bhagavat.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Paradevatayah.
Paradevataya.
Of the Transcendental Lord.
The Transcendental Lord.
Vijay.
Vijay.
Without strings.
Without strings.
Bibarshi.
Vibharsi.
You are carrying.
You are carrying.
Dhanushi.
Dhanushi.
Two bows.
Two bows.
Suhrit.
Surit.
Of a friend.
Of a friend.
Atmanaha.
Atmanaha.
Of yourself.
Of yourself.
Arte.
Arte.
For the sake.
For the sake.
Kimva.
Kimva.
Or.
Or
Mrigan.
Mirgan.
Forest animals.
Forest animals.
Mrigayase.
Mirgayase.
Are you trying to hunt?
Are you trying to hunt?
Vipine. In
Vipine.
this forest.
In this forest.
Pramatan.
Brahmatan.
Who are materially maddened.
Who are materially maddened.
Translation. The prince mistakenly addressed the Apsara, O best of saintly persons, who are you? Why are you on this hill, and what do you want to do? Are you one of the illusory potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? You seem to be carrying two bows without strings. What is the reason you carry these bows? Is it for some purpose of your own, or for the sake of a friend? Perhaps you carry them to kill the mad animals in this forest. Please repeat. The prince mistakenly addressed the Apsara.
Prince mistakenly addressed the Apsara.
O best of saintly persons, who are you?
O
Best
best
of saintly persons, who are you?
Why are you on this hill, and what do you want to do?
Why are you on this hill, and what do you want to do?
Are you one of the illusory potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
Are you one of the illusory potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
You seem to be carrying 2 bows without strings.
You seem to be carrying 2 bows without strings.
What is the reason you carry these bows?
What is the reason you carry these bows?
Is it for some purpose of your own or for the sake of a friend?
Is this for the purpose of your own or of sake of a friend?
Perhaps you carry them to kill the mad animals in this forest.
Perhaps you carry them to kill the mad animals in this forest.
Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. While undergoing severe penances in the forest, Agnidra was captivated by the movements of Purvachitti, the girl sent by Lord Brahma. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Kamaistaistar hitagyanaha, when one becomes lusty, he loses his intelligence. Therefore, Agnidra, having lost his intelligence, could not distinguish whether Purvachitti was male or female. He mistook her for a Muniputra, the son of a saintly person in the forest, and addressed her as Munivarya. Because of her personal beauty, however, he could not believe her to be a boy. He therefore began studying her features. First he saw her 2 eyebrows, which were so expressive that he wondered whether he or she might be the Maya of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words used in this connection are Bhagavat Paradevatayaha. Devata, the demigods, all belong to this material world, whereas Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is always beyond this material world and is therefore known as Paradevata. The material world is certainly created by Maya, but it is created under the direction of Paradevata, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. Maya is not the ultimate authority for the creation of this material world. Maya acts on behalf of Krishna. Purvachitti's eyebrows were so beautiful that Agnidra compared them to bows without strings. He therefore asked her whether they were to be used for her own purposes or for the sake of someone else. Her eyebrows were like bows meant to kill animals in the forest. This material world is like a great forest, and its inhabitants are like forest animals such as deers and tigers, meant to be killed. The killers are the eyebrows of beautiful women. Captivated by the beauty of the fair sex, all the men of the world are killed by bows without strings, but cannot see how they are killed by Maya. It is a fact, however, that they are being killed, bhutva bhutva praliyate. By dint of his tapasya, Agnidra could understand how Maya acts under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word pramattan is also significant. Pramatta refers to one who cannot control his senses. The entire material world is being exploited by people who are pramatta or vimudha. Prahlad Maharaj therefore said, Sochetato vimukachetasa indriyartha maya sukhaya baram udvahato vimudhan. They are rotting in material activities for transient material pleasure and spoiling their lives, toiling all day and night simply for sense gratification with no attachment for love of Godhead. I am simply lamenting for them and devising various plans to deliver them from the clutches of Maya. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9, Verse 43. Karmis who act very seriously for sense gratification are always referred to in the Shastras by such terms as pramatta, vimukha, and vimudha. They are killed by Maya. However, one who is apramatta, a sane, sober person, is dhira, knows very well that a human being's primary duty is to render service to the Supreme Person. Maya is always ready to kill those who are pramatta with her invisible bows and arrows. Agnidra questioned Purvachitti about this. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savdutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savdutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Scha He Krishna Karna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Haripriye Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vichane Nirvishesha Sandhvari Pasatare Sajane Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sandhubhya Vijapatitanam Pavnebhya Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Agnidra has gone to do his to do some tapasya, and his motivation is a bit different from his father's, from Priyavrata's. So Agnidra is the son of Priyavrata. And he's now become the ruler of Jambudvip, and he wants to find a suitable wife to help him fulfill his duties, and so he goes to do some deep meditation, and he's worshipping Lord Brahma to get that, essentially, to get a suitable wife. And so Lord Brahma understands what he's after, and so he sends this Apsara, Purvachitti, and she is a very, very beautiful woman, and we're seeing now how she is approaching Agnidra, and there's how it kind of breaks his meditation. So if we compare Canto 5, Chapter 1 versus Chapter 2, it's a bit interesting because Agnidra was the son of a very great Vaishnava. So how does the son of a great Vaishnava become kind of a materialist, basically? He's interested in material life, and he wants, Prabhupada says he's searching after some material salvation, like he wants to go to Pitri Loka where he can enjoy some material benefits as well. But he's the son of quite a great Vaishnava, Priyavrata. So there is one of the commentators on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, his name is Giridhar Lal Goswami, and in his Bala Prabodhini commentary on Bhagavatam, he mentions that Agnidra was actually born during that time when Priyavrata was kind of caught up in his material enjoyment. And so Agnidra was born or conceived at the time when Priyavrata had a lot of lusty desires. So, and that's why Agnidra's nature was more materialistic and more lusty. Because on one hand, Priyavrata was very renounced, and even though he was very renounced by nature, Lord Brahma ordered him to do a service that actually took him away from that renunciation of his. And Priyavrata, although he accepted it, he didn't just immediately accept it without any questions. He had some concerns, and he was concerned that if he follows the order of Brahma, he's going to get, all entangled in material life. It's a legitimate concern. He's like, I want to renounce. I want to focus just on my spiritual life. And Lord Brahma's telling him, no, go and do all these material duties. So Priyavrata he was a bit worried about that. It wasn't exactly what he wanted. It was completely the opposite, actually, from what he wanted. And it was pushing him more towards materialism. And it looks like his concern was actually warranted. He was concerned that he would get caught up in material life, and it appears that he did actually get caught up in material life. So it was a warranted concern that he had, because he kind of ended up falling down essentially from his position of complete detachment and this platform of jnana, but it wasn't his choice. He was ordered to do that by his superiors. And then he conceived a child who was pious in Agnidra, but Agnidra, although he was pious, he wanted pious material enjoyment also. So then the question comes that if we surrender, so when you surrender, there's this idea of surrender means you're giving up control. And it's kind of a scary proposition, because giving up control means we'll start thinking, well, if I'm giving up control, then who's going to look after me? How can I trust that anybody else is actually going to care for me as much as I care for myself? So surrender can be kind of a daunting thing, and it's something that all devotees are asked to do, is to surrender. So, okay, if we surrender, then we say, well, who's going to take care of us? And another fear that can arise in this concept of surrender is, now that we've heard this story of Priyavrata in the last chapter, it seems that there's this other danger of surrendering, which is that if we don't take charge of ourselves spiritually, let's say from a devotee's perspective, if we say, if we don't take care of our own spiritual life, we take full charge of our own spiritual life and take care of ourselves spiritually, and if we instead just surrender to superiors and we don't take any control of our own spiritual life ourselves, just surrender to superiors, then what if we do that and then we become entangled in some service? Or, what if we risk becoming contaminated because we just mindlessly surrender to superiors without question? And how do we know that those superiors always have our best interests at heart? Because Brahma ordered Priyavrata, you go away from spiritual life and you do material stuff. And Brahma is the supreme authority in this universe. He is the head of our sampradaya. So imagine if our ultimate Param Guru, Lord Brahma, comes and tells you he is more senior than any other guru. He's the top in the sampradaya. He's the most senior person in the universe. And he comes and tells you, I want you to go and get engaged in material stuff, in material life. So this concept of surrender kind of brings this question, like, is it actually safe to surrender to our authority, just complete surrender? Because that's kind of what we're being asked to do. So it's an interesting point. And even Priyavrata, he also questioned Brahma. He also questioned him, and he questioned his authorities. But he did it in a polite way, of course, not in a rude or a challenging way. He did it in a polite way, but he did question them because he didn't want to become entangled. And then he did become a bit entangled. But by Krishna's blessings and by Lord Brahma's blessings, he was able to get out of that entanglement later on. And after going through that process and going through that experience, he became even stronger in his bhakti. He became even stronger in his Krishna consciousness. So there is some lesson and some hope for devotees in this, that by following authority, we become ultimately stronger in our Krishna consciousness, even though we can't see it in the short term. That in the short term, even though sometimes it appears that we may be getting caught up in stuff, we might be getting sidetracked from where we want to be in our Krishna consciousness, but the power comes in following the authority. Krishna is taking care of us, and he's seeing what's happening, and he sees that surrender, and he will see that, okay, you are getting a little entangled, but you're getting entangled because you're genuinely trying to follow a legitimate authority. And so ultimately, we will become stronger as a result of that. For example, is there any mantra which is more powerful than the Maha Mantra? Is there any mantra? There is one mantra that's more powerful than the Maha Mantra. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, because they are so merciful. Gaunitai are so merciful. So then the logical question is, if the Panchatattva mantra is more powerful even than the Maha Mantra, then why don't we just do japa of the Panchatattva mantra the whole time? Why do we chant? Why do we only say a little bit of the Panchatattva mantra, but then we give all the emphasis to the Maha Mantra?
Because whatever offenses that we are doing during the Maha Mantra chanting, by asking mercy from the Panchatattva, because whatever offenses are happening, we are praying to them that please get rid of those offenses. Because they are more merciful.
Yeah, but that just proves the point of why the Panchatattva mantra is even more powerful. So, and actually, this is a misconception that many devotees have in ISKCON, that even when we chant our japa, Prabhupada actually never taught that you have to chant Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Panchatattva mantra at the beginning or end of your round, of each round. He never taught that, but in ISKCON, almost everybody does this. It's okay, it's not a bad thing, it's not a deviation, but because you're asking for blessings, like you mentioned, Srimad Prabhu, that you're asking for the Panchatattva to forgive you for your offenses, you're asking for mercy, you're asking to get this taste. But actually, the way Prabhupada taught japa was you just start chanting Hare Krishna and you just do Hare Krishna all the way around. You don't actually, but this most people don't know this in ISKCON, but Prabhupada didn't actually teach it like that. Personally, I always chant the Panchatattva mantra because it's a way for me to connect with our deities of Gaura-Nitai, and I feel that it's a way of in between each mantra my mind will get distracted, and so it's a way for me to bring myself back and again ask for the mercy of the Panchatattva. So there's nothing wrong with it. Senior devotees have commented that it's okay to do it, but it's not actually exactly how Prabhupada had taught it. So then the question is, why is it that we are not simply chanting whole 16 rounds of japa with Panchatattva mantra? Why is it that in the kirtan we are not just chanting Panchatattva mantra the whole time? It's because that's the standard that was given to us by our acharyas. That's what Lord Chaitanya taught. That's what the Goswamis taught and the Parampara taught, Prabhupada taught. And because we follow what they told us to follow, the power and the power of this sadhana comes from the surrender of following what our spiritual seniors have taught us to do. But if we think that we know better and we say we're going to do something that's even better than this, we're going to do something different, and we start concocting our own system by doing things that Prabhupada never established and never taught, and the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas never established and never taught, then we risk being disconnected from the power of that parampara. So ultimately, for example, when you look at Mahabharata, there's some fantastic weaponry that they're using, right? Like brahmastras and amazing weapons. If you go search deeply into the Vedic literature, you can find the mantras and the techniques actually for summoning these weapons. But if you go by yourself and you find that mantra and you just chant the mantra which summons brahmastra, do you think brahmastra is going to come? No. And why is that? is because you haven't been given the authority by a senior to do that. A guru has not given you, a guru who themselves know the secret of it and who have been given it to them by their guru, they've not empowered you to do this, and therefore it's not going to work. So similarly, we may do all kinds of magical and powerful and wonderful things, but if we're not following it, as an order of our spiritual masters, and if we're not following what the parampara is telling us, then it loses its potency. So in the case of Priyavrata, even though he was told to go into material life, he came out the other side stronger in his Krishna consciousness because of the power of following the parampara. So Krishna, he sees everything. He sees all of that, what we're doing. And yes, sometimes we may get a little entangled. And entangled means, not necessarily just entangled like in the way that Agnidra is getting entangled. I mean, he's getting pretty entangled here. He's pretty much interested in, material life. But entangled could even just mean that what if you're given so much service that you can't even complete your core sadhana very well, or you have to rush through it, and then a few years go by and you're thinking, I never wanted to really be doing this. I wanted to be diving deeper into my own spiritual life. I wanted to be doing other things. And then, but ultimately, Krishna is seeing all of that. And so even though you aren't, maybe you wanted to be, spending more time studying Shastra, or spending more time doing quality japa, reading Prabhupada's books and so on, but instead you're always busy with service and you don't really get to do that so much. But Krishna is seeing that, and Krishna is seeing that you're following the order of the parampara, and therefore there's power in, there's Shakti in that, in doing that. So, yes, even though there is that kind of question that what's going to happen to me if I surrender, and am I going to be taken care of, because there's a risk, like Priyavrata, essentially it looks like Priyavrata fell down. Yes, but because he followed the order of his seniors, he came out the other side even stronger for it. And Brahma knew at that time when he was telling this to Priyavrata, he knew, and he actually, it's described that he actually smiled when he was giving this instruction to Priyavrata, and he smiled because in his mind he was thinking, I know I am an obstacle in his path of bhakti, and I'm telling him to do something which is counterintuitive, and so he was smiling. But he was smiling because he was thinking, although I have become an obstacle for Priyavrata, for his advancement, I know that ultimately Priyavrata's bhakti is going to become stronger as a result of going through this. So Brahma was smiling. But, so for a devotee, everything is auspicious. Everything is su, right? Even if they're a devotee who is not so advanced, but if they have decided to surrender to Krishna, they may be making many other mistakes. And actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments on this on Hari Bhakti Vilas about sadhu ninda, about avoiding offenses towards devotees, that even if there's a devotee who is not so advanced, but if they may be making mistakes, they may be doing all kinds of things that are maybe not correct, but if we start to criticize that devotee, then we're committing sadhu ninda. Because that devotee, even though they're not perfect, even though they're making many mistakes, they have decided that they're surrendering to Krishna. And because they've made that decision to surrender to Krishna, they are a devotee and we should not criticize them. So, because for a devotee, everything is su, like Sudarshan, right? Everything is auspicious. So even if something comes to a devotee in the form of an obstacle, ultimately it becomes auspicious for that devotee, because even an immature devotee has decided that Krishna is their shelter. Krishna's lotus feet, right? We surrender to Krishna's lotus feet, and yeah, even if we're not perfect, Krishna will protect us. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mokshayashyami ma sucha. Don't fear. You just surrender unto me. Don't worry about anything else. I'll take care of the rest. I carry what, Krishna says, I carry what my devotees lack. I preserve what they have. Krishna's overseeing. He's orchestrating everything. Once you surrender to Krishna, you become Krishna's responsibility, his personal responsibility. So he has to take care of you. And because of that, so having that knowledge, a devotee can become fearless. Because whatever happens, even if it looks like like an obstacle or a setback, the devotee can be confident that Krishna, because I've surrendered to you, even though I'm making mistakes, ultimately I am your responsibility and you're going to take care of me. Because that's what you said in the Bhagavad Gita, you promised it. So, so another interesting point is that Brahma, from a material perspective, it appears that Brahma was kinder to Agnidra than he was to Priyavrata, because he told Priyavrata to do something that he didn't want to do. But then with Agnidra, he gave him exactly what Agnidra wanted. So on one hand, Priyavrata, the wonderful, pure son, this wonderful, pure devotee, and he's just trying to work under Narada Muni's instruction to become more advanced in spiritual life, and Brahma's telling him to do something that he does not want to do, which is get entangled in material life. On the other hand, Agnidra, he has a lot of material desires, he wants material enjoyment, he's pious, but he wants material enjoyment, and Brahma, yeah, sure, and he gives him exactly, sends his best apsara. Like, wow, why is Brahma, from a material perspective, it seems kind of unfair that he didn't give Priyavrata what he wants, but he gave the materialistic son of Priyavrata exactly what he wanted. So it's an interesting point, but from a spiritual perspective, because Priyavrata followed Lord Brahma's instruction, he came out stronger. And then in these verses 6 and 7, there's another interesting point, which is about the power of sound, because Agnidra is hearing the ankle bells of this apsara, and so because he's in meditation, his eyes are half closed, he's not really focusing on anything visually around him, so it's not the sight that attracted him, it was the sound. The first thing that broke his meditation was the sound. And so sound is a very, very powerful thing. And Agnidra's would have been in very deep meditation at that time. And before he could even see her, this apsara, before he could even see her, just when he heard the sounds of the ankle bells and the sounds of her movements, it broke his meditation. So then what is the solution to that? Because there are lots of sounds in this material world, and especially in modern day, there's a lot of sounds coming from everywhere, coming from our phone, from our cars, sound systems at home, from the TV, coming from all kinds of things, lots and lots of sounds coming from everywhere. Sounds coming from the mouths of other people, sounds coming through rumors, sounds coming through gossip, sounds coming through up and down, left and right. We're surrounded by sounds that can distract us. So what's the solution? In Greek mythology, there is a story about this person, Jason. There's this hero, Jason. He's traveling around on this ship, and he's with his Argonauts, which are these elite heroes and even demigods, Greek gods and elite fighters and warriors. And they're traveling on this ship, and they go past this island called Sirens. And when they go past this island, there is the Sirens' song, which can be heard as you pass by this island. There are these kind of beautiful damsels, but also kind of like demons who are singing this beautiful song that sounds so attractive that any men who come past, they have to go to that island to see, because they think there's some really, really beautiful women singing on this island. Let's go enjoy. And so what was the solution that Jason and the Argonauts did? Because other people, they tried to do some solution by putting, wax in their ears or trying to block their ears or something like that. But it's, not so effective. So what Jason did is he brought along this person, Orpheus, who is the greatest musician in the whole world. And so what happened is Orpheus, as they get past this island of sirens and they start to hear this sound of singing, Orpheus, he starts playing music that's so beautiful that it was even more beautiful than the sound of the sirens. And that music that he played, because it was even more sweet than the sweet sound of the sirens, then those people on the boat did not get distracted by the sound of the sirens. And for anyone else, it was impossible to resist. They would have immediately gone there and they would have been finished. So the solution is, it's very difficult, probably impossible, to simply try to block out all of the sounds of the material world that are going to be distracting us. It's almost impossible to block it out, right? Just like other people tried to block out the sound of the siren by putting wax in their ears, it didn't work. But instead of trying to block out everything, we simply add something. We add a sound that's even sweeter than that other enticing sound. And so for devotees, we try and add the sound of the Maha Mantra. If we just always keep the Maha Mantra on our tongue, always hear kirtan, hear Prabhupada, hear the Maha Mantra, hear topics about Krishna, that sound is even sweeter for a devotee than any other kind of material sound that can distract us. And some examples we have of this is, we have Vishvamitra and Menaka, right? So Vishvamitra, he was doing some very intense austerities. Lord Brahma sends Menaka. Again, he sends basically like his best apsara, one of his best apsaras. And Vishvamitra gets, he gets attracted. He forgets his vows. He gets distracted. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we have our Namacharya. We have Haridas Thakur, right? And we had, we see that Ramachandra Khan, the local kind of landlord, is getting a bit worried, jealous about this very saintly Haridas Thakur. I mean, generally when you have a very saintly person, especially in a traditional area, a traditional culture, you have a very saintly person, everybody wants to give them respect. We see this even within our own community, right? As soon as there's a very saintly person, somebody's very good at speaking, very good at they're very knowledgeable in Shastra and so on, suddenly everybody starts to give them a lot of respect. And then other people maybe get a little jealous that, hey, how come this guy's getting a lot of respect? I'm not getting my respect. They're getting too much, And so then they try and find fault in that person, that what's wrong with them? Let me kind of find some fault. And if the other people, if they can only know that how many faults this devotee actually has, then they will stop giving him respect. And maybe instead they'll give me some respect. Right? So this Ramachandra Khan, he got a little bit jealous of Haridas Thakur, and he sends this prostitute. But Haridas Thakur is, he said, just let me finish my 300,000 names. He didn't even say no, right? He didn't try and block out the sound. He even said, yeah, sure, but just let me finish my 300,000 names. I've taken a promise to do this. I've taken a vow. Let me do this, and then when I'm finished, we'll do whatever you want. So Haridas Thakur didn't fall down because he, instead of trying to block it out, he added something that was even sweeter than the temptation of material sound vibration or from material temptations. So in our lives, it is inevitable that we're going to be tempted. And we have to. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be surrendering. It doesn't mean that we should just think, Krishna will take care of me. I just be a devotee. Whatever mistakes that I make, it's okay that I make those mistakes. We shouldn't be kind of too blasé about it. We should be always introspective and trying to make sure that our intention is right, but don't beat ourselves up too much about it. You know, as long as our intention is right and we recognize that when we make some mistake, we say, okay, Krishna, please forgive me for that mistake. Thank you for watching out for me and help me to learn from it. Help me to get better from it. Let me try and be better. Tomorrow, it's like in sports and I mean, even in life, with motivational speakers and stuff, they have this thing that they sometimes say, which is every day, don't try and be 100% better than yesterday. Just try and be 1% better than you were yesterday. So every day when we wake up in the morning, we could apply this to Krishna consciousness as well, right? Yukta Vairagya, we're renouncing the material world, but we can still learn from it. Bhagavatam lists so many different types of gurus in the material world, how we can learn even from a prostitute or from a snake or from a bee. There's so many lessons we can learn. So devotees, we can take this lesson that every day when we wake up, we can pray and make a kind of take a sankalpa, that let me be 1% better in my Krishna consciousness today than I was yesterday. Let me just be marginally better. Let me just be a little bit better. Something that's achievable, right? However good I was yesterday or however bad I was yesterday, let me just be 1% better, just a little bit better, so that we can constantly be making some small baby steps of progress instead of these anarthas of Ganatarala, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about, which is the anarthas that appear for very junior devotees. Ganatarala, thick and thin, that suddenly they're super fanatic and really, just doing all kinds of vows and austerities, and they're doing too much sadhana and so much chanting and everything. Like, wow, they've made some, sometimes this happens with new devotees. They come in and suddenly we're thinking, wow, this guy's made so much advancement in such a short time. Look how wonderful they are. And then a few months later, they've just gone back down the other side. So Gana Tarala, you go thick and thin, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. So unsteadiness of fanaticism and too much, and then too little, and then too much, and then too little, like a roller coaster going up and down. So instead, make it measurable and make it sustainable. Every day we just try and be 1% better than we were yesterday. And Prabhupada, once the devotees were walking along a beach, one of those morning walks with Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, sannyasis, they should be trying to reduce they should be minimizing their amount of eating and sleeping. And then Burijan Prabhu was there. He asked, Prabhupada, what about householders? What about grihastas? And Prabhupada said, grihastas, they can eat and sleep 24/7. So Prabhupada had a sense of humor. He was being sarcastic, obviously. He was making a joke. So it's like, just because you're a grihasta and you have a little bit of extra facility doesn't mean that you shouldn't be consciously aware of the same principles that the sannyasi is following, the same principles that the brahmachari is following. We're all trying to follow that too. Just because, he's a sannyasi, I don't have to do that. I'm a grihasta, I'm not a sannyasi. No. Just because you're a grihasta, you should still be taking care to make sure that your Krishna consciousness is not being impeded. So if that means, try not to overindulge in eating or sleeping, or whatever your vice happens to be. That's the importance of being introspective and honest with yourself. Like, what is my vice? What is the thing that is the biggest obstacle in my Krishna consciousness? And then let me be a little bit, careful about that. Let me try and, avoid that, or let me get better at that. Anyway, so yeah, I think for me the big lesson that kind of stuck out for me in those two verses was the power of sound vibration, and how important it is that for an addict, simply telling them to give up the thing that they're addicted to is very difficult, but substituting it with something even better makes it much easier. Anyway, anybody have any thoughts?
So on that, thank you for that. On that point of parampara, and how we're saying that At the beginning of the chapter, it was described that Agnidhar's, one of his main qualities was that he was following whatever Priyavrata's teaching was, so he took it up, so that was one of his best qualities. So that's why he was also like moving ahead. Now, following that, following parampara, following authority, why it is so hard? And is it hard because is the fault with the leaders, or is it hard because it's the fault with the followers? But like often we see that in material world, it is becoming hard. Like any time you want to see any kind of structures, is just like, no, I don't want to go through the authority, or like I think that the authority is not capable enough, or things like that. I make up my mind, and also the authority thinks, okay, these people, they are not listening because they are not trained enough, or they don't understand the thing. So, from your perspective, where do you see, I know it's not a very yes/no question, but how do you see that?
Well, I think that if you have, let's say you take a piece of string, and if that string has gotten really entangled, it's gotten really tangled up, and maybe some kids were playing with the string or whatever, and they tied lots and lots of knots in it, and the more tangled up it is, the harder it is to untangle it, right? So let's just say you give it to a toddler and you ask the toddler to untangle the string. They're just probably going to tighten the knots even more because they're going to be struggling with it, right? Just kind of like when a fly hits a spider's web and they start struggling with it, but actually it just makes them even more entangled. But then if you give that string to an adult and they're very patiently, they know how to untangle it and they're patiently doing it, it still takes time and it's still difficult. So the way I see it is that we are so entangled in the web of material nature that we've been in this for trillions and trillions of lifetimes, like a fly struggling in that web. We're so caught up in the web that it takes time to untangle that. And so although it seems hard right now, it's like if that fly stopped struggling, right, then it can get a bit of a break. You'd be like, just relax, just stop struggling for a bit, and it can get a break. That break is nice, but it's not helping the fly get out of the web either. Right? So we could say, well, why don't if I just did my own thing, sure, you will feel the relief of the cessation of struggling. But if you imagine being a fly or being caught up in a web or caught up in a rope, and it's like, I can just relax for a bit, but you're not getting anywhere. But if somebody goes, hold on, let me start untangling this, and then it's like, okay, I need you to move a little bit here, okay, move a bit there, and I'm going to move that piece of web and this piece of web. And it becomes a little uncomfortable, but at least you're making progress. And it's slow and it's sometimes painful and uncomfortable, but at least you're making progress. So is it better to be staying still or going backwards, or is it better to be going forwards? So even though it seems a little difficult sometimes, the point is we're going forwards, and we always want to be going forwards. We don't want to be stuck still, and we don't want to be going backwards. So for me, when I get, when I get those kinds of thoughts that what should I be doing here? What happens if somebody, a senior to me, asks me to do something that I'm not sure about or I don't agree with, but I have to surrender to my authority, so I'll do what they say. I'll raise my concern in a polite way. So that's what Priyavrata did with Brahma. It's okay. Prabhupada also said he wanted intelligent ladies and gentlemen. He didn't want blind followers that are just repeating what he said like a parrot. He wants them to kind of, understand it. And that's why he's given not only the Sanskrit Devanagari, and then the English, and then even the word for word of each verse, and then the translation and a purport. So it's like, he wants us to learn. He wants us to be intelligent and to think. But so I also will question my authority if I think that there's something that I'm not sure about or I don't agree with. But at the end of the day, after I've heard their instruction, it's my job then to follow them. And at least I've done my part of raising my concern, and that's up to them now to consider and decide what to do. So at the end of the day, my success is in following the orders of my superiors. That becomes my success. Like Arjuna did the same thing. He was basically murdering his own family and friends, and even Guru Hatya. Can you imagine what a terrible sin that is? But he did that under instruction of Krishna, and therefore he became glorious for it. So even when things seem difficult, and when they seem like I don't even agree, and maybe your leader's wrong, maybe they are wrong, but I've raised my concern and I'm just going to follow anyway. What do you think Krishna sees? If he saw somebody that's like, no, I disagree and I'm just going to fight you every step of the way. I'm just going to disagree. I'm going to tell everybody that I know that I disagree. Every time I give a class, I'm going to tell everybody how much I disagree with the leadership. Every time I get a platform, I'm going to tell everybody how much I disagree. What do you think Krishna is seeing? Do you think Krishna is seeing, wow, this guy's so smart. He's so smart. He's the only one who can really see how bad the leadership is, and that he can criticize them, and he's telling everybody how bad they are. He's the only enlightened one in the whole community. You think that's what Krishna is seeing? It's like, Gonitai, they already know everything in our hearts. They already know what's going on. Everything's kind of folding out according to their plan anyway. What Krishna sees is what's in our heart. So if Krishna sees within our heart and he sees this devotee, okay, even though he's being intellectually challenged, and even though he's concerned that is it right, is it not right, he's still polite, he still follows Vaishnav etiquette, he raised his concerns, and now he's trying to simply follow and serve, he's surrendered. Like Arjuna said, I'm now a soul surrendered unto you, please instruct me. And Arjuna said, okay, Krishna, you instruct me. Then Krishna said, well, you got to do this. And Arjuna goes, what, really? And Krishna says, yeah. And then Krishna says, and you got to do this other thing. And then Krishna says, why did you tell me one thing? Now you told me another thing. And then Krishna calls him, Janardan, because he says, you're bewildering my mind. What is this? This is confusing. You told me this, now you're telling me, no, actually this other thing is better. But at the end of the day, Krishna, even though Arjuna, he questioned Krishna. There's a lot of Arjuna Uvachas in the Bhagavad Gita also, where Arjuna's like, hold on, what about this? You're telling me control my mind? But that's impossible. It's like you may as well tell me to control the wind or control the waves of the ocean with my bare hands. It's so difficult. Why are you telling me to do something impossible? But even though Arjuna questioned it politely, because he was surrendered to Krishna, he ultimately did what Krishna told him. And even though from an external perspective it seemed wrong, his power came in following. His power came in surrender. That's where his authority came from. Prabhupada always also said this. He said, I don't have any authority myself. I am not making any of this up. My authority comes from the fact that I am following my authority, and they are following their authority. And that's the power of the parampara. So I think, in our practical, day-to-day Krishna conscious lives, it's inevitable, especially in the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, it's inevitable that we're not going to all agree. We don't live in, even in Swargaloka, even in heavenly planets, there's so many times we hear stories of the demigods also disagreeing. They're far more intelligent than we are, far more advanced than we are. Do you think they don't have as much knowledge in leadership as we have on Earth? They lead the universe. They lead whole planets and systems in the universe. They also have disagreements and problems, and they have to go to Brahma, and then sometimes Brahma can't solve it. Then they say, let's all go to Vishnu and see what he can do. He's the only one that can solve this now, right? So if even they have problems, we should expect that, especially in the material world and especially in the age of Kali, then it's inevitable that we're going to have miscommunication, that we're going to have disagreements. But if we can accept that, and whenever it happens, be like, it's no surprise. Obviously it's going to happen. It's totally obvious. We're in the material world. It's Kali Yuga. Naturally, these disagreements are going to happen. But it's how we respond to that makes Krishna either happy or maybe not as happy with us. You know, and some siddhim haritoshanam, our ultimate success is in making Krishna pleased. So if we can please Prabhupada, if we can please Krishna, then whenever these things come up, we go, what would Prabhupada want? What would Krishna want? And we got to be very careful not to go, Prabhupada and Krishna would want what I want. Prabhupada and Krishna would want what I think is the best solution. So sometimes things happen and it's just like, that was a terrible decision. Why did they do that? Why did they say that? And you might even think like that, and you might even question them and have a discussion about it. But then ultimately, teamwork makes the dream work, right? If everybody works together as a team, even with a really terrible leader, like myself, for example, even if you have a terrible temple president, but if everybody works together as a team, then a lot can get done for Krishna, a lot can get done for Prabhupada. See, I'll give you one quick example before we finish, is that, in this past month, the devotees distributed more than, 500 books. They distributed something like 12 or 13 sets of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So much was done. You think I had anything to do with that? I didn't go and distribute any books. Right? But if everybody, because devotees came in and said, let's get on this, let's take this, Bhadra Purnima seriously, let's take Prabhupada's instructions to distribute his book seriously, because they did that, and because other devotees said, let's get this temple finished, or let's make sure that the kitchen is as nice as possible for the devotees, or let's make sure that the bathrooms are fixed, or let's make sure that this is done, or the Sudarshan Chakra, let it be not. But because everybody's working together as a team, then lots of good things can happen. And so it doesn't matter who's there, actually. Krishna puts whoever he wants, and I don't understand why. We don't understand why he puts who he puts. But if we just simply follow and work as a team, even under a terrible leader, the greatest of things could happen, because Krishna is seeing the sincerity in our hearts that we're trying to just do something to make him happy. And so that's a big thing that we got to be very careful, in ISKCON. We got to be very careful that if we disagree with leadership, it doesn't mean we should just go and sabotage, split, become separatist, go off and do other, not only go off and split off and do something totally different and try and steal resources and manipulate people and do all of these things. That's not what's going to make Prabhupada happy. But Krishna and Prabhupada, they're going to see what's the mood in your heart. And ultimately, that's what matters, what our intention is. Just like, so many stories like, what was it? Was it Vidura? I can't remember who it was. Maybe Vidura's wife or something was, when Krishna came over, was giving the banana peel instead of the banana. But if she was, they were feeling ecstatic love, accidentally gave the banana peel. The intention was to give the banana though. And Krishna, so if somebody says, I've heard someone say this before, that Krishna doesn't see what you give, he sees what you don't give. Is that correct?
What we hold back.
Yeah, Krishna doesn't see what we give, he sees what we hold back. Is that correct? I don't think that's correct. I don't agree with that. I think Krishna, he amplifies whatever tiny little thing we've done. He amplifies that. Wow, so wonderful. The small spider put 1 grain of sand in the ocean. Ram goes, wow, Hanuman, you better watch out. This guy is really good. The spider, Hanuman's like, I'm bringing whole mountains. But Lord Ram saw the intention. So Krishna, he magnifies whatever little thing we do. So, it's our attitude that counts. I don't know. Sorry, I've gone on for too long, but
Covered quite a bit of things. I think it answered, obviously, that at one point of time, what at the beginning of the chapter is what said that it about the obedience of and as you mentioned, that obedience doesn't mean that a blind following or being a puppet. But at the same time, Prabhupada, when he is writing his journal, the last thing is Nachal, make me as a puppet.
Yeah.
So you say, okay, one has parrot, one has puppet. What is the difference? But then you see the difference between them, how both of them operate, because they have full faith and on their seniors and taking that instruction and have the surrender. Here it's just I want to get something from the authority, I just follow them just to get something. So that's a big difference there. So that's why this obedience is much better, and obviously has all the success comes there. Thank you.
Thanks, Prabhu. All right, anything else before we finish up?
Hare Krishna, Janardan Prabhu. Thank you
Hare
very much
Krishna.
for the wonderful class. I just wanted to say something that Srila Prabhupada, when he chanted Mahamantra, and I listened to his, chanting, and at the end of each, round, he always will chant Panchatattva mantra. And we have, for myself, I've seen my Guru Maharaj always did that. And at the end of each round, I always chant. And actually, by chanting Panchatattva, we are really actually praying to them, because we make so many anarthas when we are chanting. And it's Lord Chaitanya is a merciful incarnation, and he helps us to, even if we are chanting unattentively and with aparadhas, then actually it's a prayer that he forgives us for that. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Karamani Radhamaraji. Yeah, look, like I said, I also chant the Panchatattva mantra when I do my japa, because I think, for me personally, I'm not necessarily going to say that everybody must do that, but for me personally, I find that it's important for me to ask for the blessings of Panchatattva and Gauranitai. But what I was saying is that Prabhupada's disciples, at least the ones that I've spoken to, they've said that Prabhupada didn't actually teach them that way, that this just became something in ISKCON later on. So it's not to say that it's a bad thing. All of the Prabhupada disciples that I've spoken to about this, they have said that it's fine. It's absolutely fine and great to chant Panchatattva mantra before each round, or even just at the start and the end of your japa, each way. There's no problem with it. But my point was simply that we should also be aware of, sometimes we do things and we don't know where it came from or why, and so the power comes in following the instruction and not just following, but following intelligently and trying to understand the instruction. And so by understanding the instruction, we can understand that chanting the Panchatattva mantra, for example, if we use that simply as an example, it's not offensive. It's just that Prabhupada just didn't happen to teach it that way. That's all.
No, he didn't teach us, but I can hear Srila Prabhupada. I hear his chanting, and in Vrindavan every day when they put a recording, and when people are chanting and Prabhupada chanting, and I have heard that at the end of the round he will chant. He didn't tell specifically in his books or anywhere, but he demonstrated that we do. So it doesn't matter whether he told, particularly in early days, the important thing for him was to tell all the Westerns and in USA, they just chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He didn't give that so, clearly in his books and all that, but he demonstrated himself when he was chanting that he will chant that. I just wanted to say that, that sometimes they don't tell us, it's not in our books and anywhere, but when we observe that, we know that this is what, and we know why we do that. Because I can say for myself, my chanting is not very pure chanting. It's probably full of anarthas. So maybe, that remind me that I have to chant it and asking for the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point, Mataji, that just because Prabhupada didn't directly say it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. But as long as we're following in the Parampara and the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, and we're following our authorized acharyas, there are also recordings of Prabhupada Japa where he's not chanting it. So it's not that it's necessarily a compulsory standard. Sometimes Prabhupada didn't do it, at least in many of there are multiple japa recordings. But another thing is that even with the even with those japa recordings which we play every morning during japa time, that's another interesting thing that happened, is that when they started doing that actually when Prabhupada was still around, and then when Prabhupada found out that they were playing recordings of his japa during the japa time, he actually told them to stop. He said, that's not for you, that's for me, that's my own, like that japa recording, that's Prabhupada's own meditation, that's his private meditation. It's not for us to be publicly playing it during japa, and when we're doing japa is our own meditation. So, but yet it's still the standard in pretty much all ISKCON temples all over the world that they do play Prabhupada's japa recording. Even actually Prabhupada had given instruction not to do that. So, there are lots of different things, and it's, these are probably, I would say, these are details, these are smaller details, and we try and focus more on the bigger, lessons that Prabhupada is teaching us. But there are lots of interesting things like this, yeah. Anyway, any other points? Otherwise, okay, I think it's already a bit over, so thank you very much, everybody. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.